What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. This past week was one of the strangest weeks in recent memory because while we did get the release of a new HomePod second generation, we did not receive a single software update for the second week in a row. So in this episode, we're going to explain why, along with an update on iOS 16.3 and the forthcoming 16.3.1. And then after discussing the software side of things, we're going to discuss the upcoming controversial foldable iPad. We're going to talk about the iPhone 15 and 16 Pro Max, Apple doing something they haven't done since 2016, Apple getting rid of a key position that I don't think anybody is happy about, your chance at a brand new unopened iPhone 2G, and much more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with all things Apple, make sure to click that subscribe button down below so you don't miss next week's episode. All right, so as we always do, let's start off with an update on the latest public release, which is iOS 16.3. Now, last week, I said to give it a week or so to judge, don't jump the gun and say this is a perfect update just yet. But here we are 2 weeks later, and things I have to say are much better than they were on 16.2 for me and for most of you guys. Now, that does not mean that this is a perfect software update. It's far from that, but it's much better than the mess that was 16.2. Now, some of the issues I'm facing currently are related to the sleep focus mode. So for some reason, my sleep focus mode will randomly turn on way earlier than it's supposed to and than expected. And then also it's turning off randomly in the middle of the night. Now I've checked my watch, I've checked all my other Apple products, nothing else is triggering that. It just seems to happen randomly, and it's extremely annoying, especially when it turns on randomly. Now, also a more widespread bug has to do with the always on display. So a lot of users, and I've experienced this myself as well, notice that the always on display will just turn itself off randomly after a few minutes. Now, it doesn't happen every time, but when you lock your phone, whether you have the wallpaper showing or not, it will just go away. You won't see the time anymore. It will just turn all black. And I'm not sure if it's detecting, maybe that it's face down or what, but there is a bug currently in 16.3 that turns off the always on display after a few minutes. I'm also all of a sudden getting this issue right here as well in 16.3, where my shortcut automation just does not work. You can see 3 days in a row here, it has not worked, whereas it worked fine on 16.2. So something has been changed in shortcuts in 16.3 related to automations, more specifically related to the set wallpaper photo action. And then the main issue with 16.3 is still the issue with the home application and HomePods. So ever since that home architecture upgrade in 16.2, everything has been an absolute nightmare, an absolute mess in the home application. So I would expect to see that home architecture upgrade get re-released in either 16.3.1 or 16.4. Now, speaking of iOS 16.4, we might also finally be getting Apple Pay Later. So Tim Cook told CNBC that Apple employees have been beta testing the Apple Pay Later feature and that it will be launching soon. Now, we'll talk more about Apple's Q1 earnings later in the video, but we should see Apple Pay Later, I would presume, in 16.4. So aside from those few bugs that I mentioned earlier, the overall performance on 16.3 has been relatively solid. I mean, I have had a few random resprings, which I haven't had since like 16.0. So, they're just very soft resprings though. It just resprings right back to the lock screen and I go right back in and do what I was trying to do beforehand. But that's usually when my phone is under load and it's warm and things like that. So I feel like that's not a super big knock on 16.3, but still performance overall has been fine and battery life has definitely been better than it was on 16.2. It is noticeable for me and for most of you guys as well. And just an update on the security keys feature, I have officially set this up on my main Apple ID and I've kind of removed every other form of two-factor authentication. So I would highly recommend setting this up if you haven't done so already. I've had no issues with it. I've signed in on a computer and on my phone having to use the security keys and it's worked flawlessly. So if you still haven't picked one up, go ahead and check it out. I will leave a link to this security key in the description below. Keep in mind though, you do need two of these, one as your primary and then one as a backup in case you lose one of the security keys. Okay, so now let's answer the question that we said we would answer in the intro. Why have we not received any type of iOS update in the past 2 weeks? Now to answer this, I need to pull up my calendar because if you guys remember, we did get iOS 16.3 released to the public right here on Monday, January 23rd. Now, we said that 16.4 beta 1 could come as soon as the following day on the 24th. However, my assumption now is that Apple never intended to release 16.4 Beta 1 that week. However, it was probably set to be released this week. So I think that maybe on the 31st, we could have seen that 16.4 Beta 1 update. However, Apple must have found something in 16.3 that needed to be addressed. And that's why I mentioned in last week's episode of Apple Weekly that a 16.3.1 is coming sooner than later in February. And now Mac rumors have all but confirmed that based on their website analytics, that a 16.3.1 is coming, because their website analytics showed that users running 16.3.1 are browsing on their websites. So I'm not sure exactly what Apple found to kind of delay a beta release, because I'm assuming that it's delayed, because it's very, very unlike Apple. I cannot remember the last time where we've gone 2 entire weeks without getting a software update in terms of a beta. Usually we have at least one beta release or public release in a 2-week span, but we did not get that. So I'm not sure if it's a security bug, if it's something to do with passkeys. I'm not too sure exactly what that is. However, I could see 16.3.1 coming as soon as Monday, February 6th. And I think that after Apple releases 16.3.1 is when we're going to see iOS 16.4 Beta 1. So that should come, if 16.3.1 comes on the 6th, we should see 16.4 Beta 1 on the 7th. But again, this has been perhaps the most strange release I've ever seen of an iOS beta, or just iOS releases in general. It's been very, very strange, so it's really hard to say. However, I would expect to see 16.3.1 in February, a couple of betas for 16.4 in February, and then a 16.4 final release at some point in March. At this point, it's looking like it's going to be late March, potentially even early April, depending on when we get that 16.4 Beta 1 release. And keep in mind that we should see new emoji in iOS 16.4 as well. So that's going to be a pretty big update, not just for the emoji, but usually Apple puts other, kind of major features in that release with the new emojis. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And let's start with a rumor that had everyone talking this week. A foldable iPad is said to be in the works and coming sooner than we think. According to Ming-Chi Kuo, Apple plans to launch a foldable iPad with a carbon fiber kickstand sometime in 2024. He said this on Twitter. Angie Technology will be the new beneficiary of an all-new designed foldable iPad. There may be no new iPad releases in the next 9 to 12 months, as the iPad mini refresh is more likely to begin mass production in Q1 of 2024. Thus, I'm taking a cautious approach to iPad shipments for 2023, predicting a year-over-year decline of 10 to 15%. Nevertheless, I'm positive about the foldable iPad in 2024 and expect this new model will boost shipments and improve the product mix. He then continues by saying that the foldable iPad will feature a carbon fiber kickstand. Carbon fiber material will make the kickstand lighter and more durable. Now, let me just say that Ming-Chi Kuo is very credible. However, there are 2 other incredibly reliable sources who have casted doubt on this report, and those 2 are Mark Gurman and Ross Young. So Ross Young said, quote, multiple OLED iPads in 2024, but hearing nothing about a foldable iPad in 2024. And then Gurman said the additions in the iPad lineup will be the redesigned OLED iPad Pros in 2024, plus entry-level and mini spec bumps. Also not hearing anything about a foldable iPad in 2024. And in response to that, Ross Young again weighed in by saying that he's heard chatter about a 20.5-inch foldable notebook for 2025, but nothing about a foldable iPad for 2024. So perhaps Ming-Chi Kuo only got leaks from the assembly line, somebody working in the assembly line, without knowing exactly what that hinge was supposed to be used for. Who knows? But it looks like late 2024, 2025, we'll be seeing a foldable iPad or notebook or something that's going to use a carbon fiber kickstand. Now let's move on to the iPhone 15 and iPhone 16, because we have an update on that periscope lens coming to the Pro models over the next 2 years. This again comes from Ming-Chi Kuo, who said, quote, only one, the highest end model of the iPhone 16 series, may have a periscope camera, not both models like the market expected. As previously predicted, the highest end model of the iPhone 15, the 15 Pro Max or 15 Ultra, will adopt the periscope camera. the market expected that adding periscope cameras to more iPhone models would drive demand for lens upgrades in 2023 through 2024. But my latest survey indicates only the highest end new iPhone 16 model in 2024 will have the periscope camera, not both models like the market expected. Therefore, the contribution of the periscope camera to the demand for lens upgrades may be lower than the market consensus. So basically, it seems that Apple expects very few people to care enough about that periscope camera to upgrade from a regular iPhone 15 or 16 to the Pro. So they're only planning to put it in the Pro Max, the highest end model. And this is kind of puzzling because that periscope lens is going to make a big difference in photo quality and probably video quality as well. But nonetheless, I do like seeing a bigger distinction between the Pro and the Pro Max models aside from just the size and the battery life. All right, now let's move on to a decision that I don't think any of us are happy to hear about, and that is that Apple is dropping the product design chief role. According to Mark Gurman, Apple is not planning to name a replacement for Vice President of Industrial Design, Evans Henke, when she departs the company in the coming months. Instead, the company's core group of about 20 industrial designers will report to Jeff Williams, Apple's chief operating officer. The report also says that the group will, quote, get larger roles as part of the shift, but Williams decided that none would be named the new head and that the entire team will report to him. That move links Apple's operations group more closely with design, an arrangement that has irked some of Apple's creative staffers. It will also elevate Williams, who is seen as a possible successor to CEO Tim Cook. So yeah, I'm with you guys. I think this is scary for the future of Apple. This is a company who built its business on design, and it seems that they're slowly but surely moving away from that and focusing more on operations and how to make the most money possible. So I don't know. I hope this is only a temporary thing due to the economic environment, because I really don't like, where this is headed. Okay, so now that we're on the topic of money, let's briefly discuss Apple's Q1 earnings, which were not so great. As a matter of fact, it was Apple's first year-over-year quarterly revenue decline since 2019 and the biggest annual quarterly revenue drop since September 2016. And this was led not only by the strong dollar, but also poor iPhone sales, with revenue down over 8%. And you can see the rest of the numbers here in terms of their overall sales versus the consensus numbers. So it was a bad quarter, but that was also expected and kind of baked into their share price for a while now. And then finally, instead of telling you about another 5 lives being saved via the crash detection feature on the iPhone 14, if you have tens of thousands of dollars sitting around, or you just need another place to park some of your money, a brand new sealed iPhone 2G just went live at auction. Just posted on LCG auctions, this original iPhone is expected to fetch over $50,000. So that would be quite an increase in value, given that the other two that were sold last year sold for $35,000 and $39,000. So, hey, if it sells for more, I would not be surprised at all. This is the most desired smartphone collectible in the entire world. So I would not be surprised to see, these go for $100,000 one day in the future. And man, I just remember these things selling for like $8,000 to $10,000 just a few years ago. Maybe in like 2019, 2018, they used to sell for like $8,000 to $10,000. Now that would have been a fantastic investment, even better than real estate or, the stock market, just on a percentage basis. So there you have it. That is the latest batch of Apple news from this past week, along with some updates on the latest iOS 16 changes and what to expect next. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe for more Apple Weekly episodes. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.